2024, and we'll call this meeting of the Fergus Falls City Council Committee of the Whole to order. Roll call, please.
Absent. Joe?
Here.
Kwame?
Here.
Here.
Here. Here. Hip.
We have a quorum, and our first discussion item will welcome Chief Kyle Bergen to discuss a memorandum of understanding with Local 248. Good morning, Chief.
Good morning, Mayor. Thank you. The first item you have before you is a memorandum of understanding. We have 2 lieutenants that were promoted in March. They are not clearly identified in the current union contract with the sergeants group. This is a contract year. So as we move through ratifying a new contract, a lot of these issues will be ironed out. So this is just kind of a temporary thing to get us through the end of the year. And once we get a finalized contract, a lot of these issues will be resolved. So just looking for a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding.
Thanks, Chief, and we can bring this to the council with that motion.
I'll offer that.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks, Scott, for second. Any questions for Chief Bergen on this issue? All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thank you, Chief. Second is an update on the cannabis zoning ordinance.
All right, thank you. I'm going to take a little extra time this morning just to kind of cover where we've been and where we need to go and what has happened in the interim. So the last meeting you had a recommendation before you for a zoning ordinance that allowed cannabis sales in a B6 and I1 through I3 zone. During that second reading, it sounded like that ordinance did not pass. A couple council members had requested to take another look at what the Planning Commission had recommended. The Planning Commission had somewhat similar language, except for they allowed the sale of cannabis in the B3, which is the downtown zone, with the conditional use. They had also indicated the buffer of 250 feet. I think I had talked to you about something in between there that involved an interim use permit rather than a conditional use permit. Just so that everyone is aware, a conditional use permit kind of carries forward in perpetuity. It becomes almost a property right to that physical location. An interim use permit would stop or end with the person that's holding the license. So I think some of the discussion that I've had from you as council is, just having this ability to maybe, if we start going down a path and we feel like we're doing the wrong thing or need to take some type of corrective action, that there's the ability to undo what we have set forth. And I think this allows for that. So an interim use would allow you to allow a cannabis business in the B3 zone, and you could set that limit from 1 to 5 years. It could be renewed after that. So that is before you right now. And just before I get into that any further, on June 24th, the Office of Cannabis Management finally put out, or they started taking applications for cannabis licenses. That was on a Monday. The Friday morning before, they finally put out this 46-page manual. So the rollout from the state has not been good. Another example of frustration on business side of things is There's a social equity component to this. If you've had a prior marijuana violation, you get preference. You get to go into this lottery system early to get a license. Well, the state has also passed a law that expunged everybody's marijuana convictions. So now these people are trying to apply for a license and all these records have been expunged. So it's just another example of how poor this whole process has been by the state of Minnesota. So I get that there's a lot of frustration from business owners. There's a lot of frustration from us in government. And we're just kind of trudging through this the best that we can. So the other thing that we talked about as a committee is how building codes and fire codes pertain to these cannabis businesses. And originally, we were looking at amending our ordinances to deal with some of these issues. And I just think in the amount of time that we have to address this, that isn't going to be a reasonable thing for us to get accomplished. And I think a better way to accomplish that is through this interim use process. We can set those types of conditions when we issue the interim use permits. So I think that kind of alleviates one more burden that we have in a very compact timeline. The other thing that we learned is that we as a city will have some say in who gets a license within our community. Originally, it was believed that the state would make the decision, but the material that was put out on June 21st says the city will have some sort of say in who is issued a license within our community. So we have one other ordinance that we have to get accomplished, and that is a registration ordinance. We will be working on that and bring that to you. But in that registration ordinance, it will talk about things like hours of operation. It will talk about how many licenses you as a council decide that you want to issue for the city. So I just bring that up so that you have more information as we kind of delve into this zoning issue. And then the last thing I want to talk about is I've had some conversations with the county in the interim. I won't name the cities, but there's at least 3 other cities within Otter Tail County that are looking at allowing cannabis sales within their communities. So we're the only city within the county that it's mandated that we allow it because we're over 12,500 people. But I just want you to know that there are other cities in Otter Tail County that are looking at allowing sales. We've had some brief discussions with county staff as far as trying to keep at least our registration laws consistent across the county. And obviously zoning is going to be more specific to each community. And then the last thing is I think Councilmember Krameyer had asked about other cities, what they're doing as far as allowing sales in the downtown area. And the only city that I was able to find that's addressed it kind of in our area is Brainerd. And they do allow for sales. They call theirs Main Street. And then I don't know if the other area was called the downtown corridor or something similar to that. But that is through, I believe, a conditional use permit. So before you have a copy of the ordinance, again, it talks about allowing for an interim use in the B3 zone. You as a council will have to approve that interim use. I think there's one potential error that we'll have to check on. On the second page, when we talk about B6, I see that cannabis retailer is not included in there. And we've had some discussion as staff as whether that should just be allowed without an interim use permit. That's what you voted on last time, is just allowing retail sales in a B6 zone. But like I said, I see that that is not clearly worded here, whether that would just be allowed through a conditional use, or be allowed through an interim use. If you go on to the industrial zones, there we're switching from an interim use to a conditional use. And a lot of that, again, has to do with addressing some of the building codes, some of the health codes, and fire code issues. The second piece, if this is the avenue that you want to go, I think you're also going to have to amend the interim use ordinance. So that's a separate ordinance, and Rolf will have that prepared for you as well. Just that cannabis sales would be something that would be an option under an interim use permit. It's not currently listed there. So with that, if there's questions, I'll certainly try to answer them the best I can. The last thing I'll just say is, we are running out of time, and you do have to pass something. If you don't pass anything, you're doing more harm to the community by passing, the B6 or this. Either one of these, I think, is acceptable. I would have been fine with the B6. I'm fine with this. I'm just saying, you as a council, you really need to kind of make a decision on this. So.
Thanks, Chief. And on that last point, the timeline then would be this: if the council does recommend this, it would potentially have its first reading at the July 15th council meeting, and a second reading at the first meeting in August. Is that how you see it?
Yeah.
And that gives you enough time.
And then how long does it have to be published?
And then 15 days after that.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're getting August, September by the time this is yeah.
Just so we understand that we are on that timeline and we need to move on this. All right. So we'll take questions. We'd look to move, have a motion to move this to the
Like that, Your Honor.
City Council on Monday night. Thank you, Anthony.
I'll second.
Second, Scott. Questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, just thanks again for all your work on it. I can tell that you've really put in the time and even brought visual materials, which is, I guess it's really neither here nor there. But I would be curious to see how the codes apply to just like a regular greenhouse versus, a cannabis business. That's just kind of the first thought that popped into my head while I was sitting here. But we don't have to delve into that.
Sure.
I'm not surprised to hear that Brainerd's allowing it, in their downtown. I mean, as I've always said, I mean, it's just kind of the way things are going, and it's all it would be is just denying, businesses a chance to be an entrepreneur, make some money, and denying, a lot of people in our community that's what they want. And so I guess, ideally what I'd like to see on Monday night is an ordinance where, it's allowed downtown by interim use. And then, as far as the B6 goes, permit, no permit, I kind of like the idea of the interim use permit because it does give the council some ability to regulate. And, if somebody shows up and they're a real cowboy and just, causing trouble and whatnot, we can say, well, there goes your permit. Kind of like I would imagine the same type of thing we could do to an alcohol business if they didn't toe the line. So, so that's what I would love to see come out of Monday night. I think that's perfectly agreeable, and I hope we can do that.
Thanks, Tom. Hey, Chief, one question. The interim use by law allows, as you mentioned, 1 to 5 years. Is that determined individually, or is that in the ordinance?
No, so that is individually. And
Okay.
this is the other part of this ordinance is this gives you, the council, almost the fullest amount of control that's allowed by law. And it gives you the most flexibility as well.
Sure.
What you looked at last week was basically if you were in a B6 zone and you met the requirements, you didn't need any other approval from the city. And the city didn't really have any other control over you. So a lot of times people might say, one is more business friendly than the other. I would argue what you voted on last time is probably more business friendly in the sense that there's not so much government oversight. This one, yeah, maybe it allows you to operate in different areas of town, but you're going to have to go through more hoops, so to speak, in order to do that. So it does give you, the council, a lot of control, a lot of flexibility, and you are the ones that will determine, is this going to be a 1 year, a 2 year, a 5 year interim use permit? And like I said, that interim use permit can be renewed.
One quick question about the interim use permit. Would there be a fee to the applicant every time they needed to renew that? Do we have any idea about how much that would be? I mean, we don't want to impose too much of a burden.
$350 is what our conditional use permits are, so we would likely use something similar.
Okay.
Clara?
Yeah, one point of concern with doing across the board interim use permits is by definition an interim use is a use that's not by right allowed in that zone. So if we're saying our entire city is by interim use only, what we're saying is that it's not allowed by right anywhere in our city. And I think that could open us up to questions of like the fairness of our zoning. So I do agree with Kyle. I think there should maybe be one spot in town where it is allowed without an interim use.
And I think, for the time being, as I read through this a little closer, the I zone would technically be the one place where you could do it without the interim use. And I'll just say this too, again, this is just our starting point. You as a council are going to, come back to this ordinance at some point in the not so distant future, just as things change. So to Clara's point, if you want to start, like Tom said, with an interim use of B6 for now, I think that that's fine, knowing that you could go into an I zone, and you wouldn't need an interim use. But again, I think these are just things that we can kind of jot down and help steer you as we go down this path, and maybe after 2 or 3 years of sales going on, you'll have a better comfort level of what you should allow, where you should allow it, that type of thing. But like I said, I just think this is important. I think this is a good starting point. And like I said, it doesn't lock you into anything that you can't undo down the road. So
Thanks, Chief. And we have the motion to bring this. We will obviously have discussion on Monday night opportunity.
So are we going on Monday night? Are we going to change it then to include kind of an I zone being, free of her?
Sure. The I zone is currently listed where it would be allowed.
We would put the conditional in that B6.
With the conditional use. And the conditional use is just merely, again, it talks about, like on a retailer, there wouldn't be a ton of conditions, but on a manufacturer in an I zone, there would probably be a lot.
So
of
a conditional use wouldn't that would clear up Clara's point or not?
Yeah.
Interim is saying it's not allowed
Well, we're
as
gonna,
base, and conditional is saying it is with conditions.
with conditions, yeah.
Okay.
So I think we'd be on good legal ground here. And the interim use, I'll just say this too, is one of the uses that is clearly outlined in the state's handbook as well as an acceptable practice. So
Would it be possible to email that the link out to the 46-page document to the council?
yes, I will make sure that everybody gets a copy.
Yep. I just need a link. Thanks.
Scott, did you have a question, comment?
Yeah, I think, well, a couple of things. I was at the League of Minnesota Cities annual conference a couple of weeks ago. The Office of Cannabis Management made a presentation that was very well attended on this particular topic. And that book that you referred to had just been released a few days earlier than that. The general sense in the room was unhappiness from the leaders and the administrators, council members, of people from all different cities across the state. And it wasn't about whether this is legal or not. That wasn't at all being discussed. It was a sense of what a burden this has thrown onto the cities from the state. And it was just a lot of heat about, you've really put an awful lot of pressure on us. You've really thrown a lot on us, and you're not giving us very good help. And there was attempts for questions, and it was, sorry, we don't have time. And it was really quite an interesting hour for what that's worth. But I have to give Kyle an awful lot of credit, and the staff as well. Frankly, we're ahead of the game compared to many of the cities that I talked to at that meeting, where many were just waiting to see what the state's going to do, hoping that the state's going to make this easier for us. And by taking a more proactive approach, I feel that we've got a greater understanding of what we're faced with here, and we're in a good place, making some steps here to have a good handle on this. To the specifics of the B6 question that you've got, though, this ordinance as it's written, as you said, would allow retail sales in B6 now with no conditional use and no interim use permit, the way I read this. And I think that's what we were after, as Claire mentioned, to have a space that didn't require any hoop, didn't require conditional use, didn't require interim use. It's just that get your business permit and here you go. And if I'm reading it right, that's the way it reads to me. Now, maybe I don't understand it as you explained it, but I believe that's the way that this is written.
B6 is interim use now.
And I've had so many different revisions come across my desk. I hope I have the right one, but what I see under B6 is the cannabis retailer isn't defined there. We just go to a micro business, a mezzo business, a cultivator.
And so by not defining it, I believe it just opens it to being considered. So maybe it would be better to clearly either list it or not.
I think it would be better just one way or the other to clean it up. Typically on a conditional use permit, and this is where I guess I'm not 100% positive. If, let's say we did B3 with a conditional use, then yes, in a B4, B5, or B6, it would be allowed without a conditional use. It would just be allowed to, but with an interim use, I don't know if the same rules apply. So that's something I think I'm gonna have to talk with Rolf about. And I think it would just be better if we spell that out clearly in the ordinance, whether you, and I don't care one way or the other if you just want a B6 without a interim use permit, or if you want it with a conditional use permit. That part doesn't matter to me. I just think for clarity, for our sake and for business's sake, that we just spell that out a little bit better
Sure.
in that section. So I will make sure that that happens with Rolf before
Okay.
Monday.
One other thing that I would also then mention, that's not specific to this question, it's kind of a little bit beyond it, is you mentioned that the cities will have greater control in some of the things that the state has produced. Once we've got a pre-approved application that comes to us from the state, as I understand it now, we will likely have more than one. And we will have the choice at the city level to decide how many we're going to have. So we can have one or we can have more, but we must have one. And so we may choose to only have one, or maybe we'll have two, or whatever we choose for a number of potential licenses that we have. Well, when it comes to choosing that, we get to set the parameters for those accepted permits. And so, for example, we might select a permit parameter that allows only, or that prefers a local business over someone that's owned from, Kentucky or someplace out of state. Trying to find ways that would be best for our city. If we're going to have a business come to town from out of town versus one that's based here in town, if we've got an ownership parameter in that list that gives us the opportunity to pick a local business rather than one that just has the flashy presentation, we ought to be able to do that. So, and there'll be lots of other details as far as how we can choose, which license to approve or not. And I look forward to that discussion. I think that'll get we'll get into the forest on that one quite quickly, I'm sure. So.
I don't think we should put out an RFP.
I think we'll have plenty to choose from. Yeah.
Scott,
the original ordinance you brought forth, the B6 didn't have any conditional use or interim, and I think we should leave that alone at B6. That's kind of where when I seen this, I didn't think it was right that the B6 was supposed to be included in on the interim part. And I think we originally were come forward on that, just the B6 was just, that's where we're going to be. So that way, if somebody wants to come to town, don't have to jump through the hoops like we just talked about, they go right to B6 and be done with it. So I think that's kind of what we talked about at our meetings.
And I think, to your point and to Tom's point, I think rather than an interim use in a B6, if you're gonna do anything, it would be conditional use. It's allowed. And then, like I said, on a retailer,
I'm talking retail only, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
yeah, the odor control and some of the environmental air things are really the only things that we as a city have control over. There's some solid waste issues that, might come into play with a retailer, but so just having a conditional use as an option might help you address some of those issues rather than trying to get them codified in another ordinance. That's the only thing. When we get into some of these other industrial type businesses, yeah, there's just a lot more from wastewater management, fire code. There's a lot of things that come into play that aren't kind of clearly spelled out. So I would definitely say for those types of businesses, you want to keep either the interim or the conditional use.
Thanks, Chief. And just to reiterate what Scott said, thanks to the work that you've put into this. Obviously, this is not an easy issue for any community to deal with, but yeah, we are, and we've had a lot of good discussion. So there's a motion to bring this proposed ordinance for consideration on Monday evening to the council. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thank you. Next, we'll call on Bill Sonmore to talk about city IT systems. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning. So here to talk about our city IT system. And that's our operating system that runs all areas of our city. You're probably aware, as we've talked about over the years, we have had a homegrown IT system here at the city of Fergus Falls. It was built and created internally. We had a long-term IT director that wrote all that. Very brilliant person that was able to create that system. Been very happy with that system. It has served us well, over the last 40 plus years. So as times change though, and retirements happen, we no longer have consistent, maintenance of that system. Our previous IT director is helping us out periodically when we need some help. But we are not adding to that system any longer, and just maintaining it into the future, would look to be a challenge. So, as staff, we went looking what's out there. What are other cities doing? I contacted our audit firm to find out what are some cities that have implemented new systems, in the not too far past. And we found some, and Sandy and I went to visit a city that, similar size, 20,000 population, to see what they were using. And they were using the Civic system. So that's the one actually I'm bringing before you today and recommending that we would go that direction. But first we started by seeing how does this work in your city? We looked at that. They were very gracious with us, brought in various staff, did demonstrations of, really how are they operating. So then we came back here and contacted Civic Systems. We also contacted another vendor, BSNA, that another area city uses. So, you don't want to just look at one. We wanted to look at a couple. We felt that Civic System matched, who we are a bit better, and just really seemed to mesh with how things flow for us. So then we had Civics do a more in-depth demonstrations by department so that all different departments can look at that. So went through that process with them. When we did BSNA, we did kind of one overview demo with them. So we did do a demo with them, but that was more at the higher level, and we didn't bring in departments for that. That was more you and I think Dan and Andrew. I think we looked at that. To kind of narrow it down, brought civics in on a department level, looked at all those areas. So then looking at the various modules that we would implement. So in your memo, I put, the accounts payable, that's how we pay the bills. Accounts receivable, that's how we receive the cash receipting, importing, community development, that's building permits, code enforcement, approvals, notifications, field inspections, the community portal. And we'll talk about that a little bit more because you're going to want to know how does this impact the residents using the system as well. Department head dashboards, our general accounting that we handle everything, project accounting, special assessments, and utility billing, of course, being a big one. That was something we really wanted to look at, first is utility billing, because that's all the money coming into the city. That's what the residents probably use the most. Since this memo, as I was looking this a little bit on Friday, I want to add also business licensing with the community portal and animal licensing. So that adds another 12,000. I'll say that to what's in your memo. Flipping over to page 2 of the memo. So those are the modules we would look at implementing. There are also some optional ones we will look at as we get implemented and see where that goes. This also has all the payroll in it. So we're basically replacing everything we have. We will be going off our AS400 system. The county has just done that not too long ago as well. I know you've implemented a new system. They were always our backup because they were also on a AS400, and we would, we were linked together and being each other's backup. So this new system, allows us to go paperless inside City Hall the way we work as well, like, invoicing and all that and approvals and department heads watching their budgets, having dashboards to say, here's how much you've spent year to date. And if you're approving this, here's how it's going to affect your budget, and some good controls that way. Certainly nice standardized for utility billing. So when you look at the resident side now, if you want to go on and say, okay, how can I access my data as a resident? You're going to be able to go in and, okay, if you want to go paperless, don't send me bills any longer. I want them paperless. You can check that yourself. You don't have to call into City Hall to have that done. You can set up ACH payments, automatic withdrawals on your own as a resident instead of sending in your, a void check, having us set it up for you. Look up your accounts, look up your history, apply for permits, pay for things. That will all be on our website. What am I missing with that community portal? It's kind of what you would expect, elsewhere when you're going in, even shopping for something. You find what you want and you click and you purchase. So that is the goal of this, is to make it more usable for the residents as well.
Right, so when we looked at systems too, we were looking for efficiencies internally, and we saw that right away, and it's like AP, for example.
Yeah.
Routing invoices and that kind of thing. But when we saw the community portal, and that you could have a link right on the website we have now, and one click, and then you see everything you need to do right there. You can see, paying a bill, building permit, or pet license, or I want to go to utilities, and you go to utilities and you can see your current billing, and you can click other options to see all of your past bills. Those are the kinds of things that people have to call us for, even to get their current balance. Mm-hmm. They have to call us and know that what they're paying is actually. And once they've made a payment, for example, on RevTrack, which works well, but once they've made that payment, they can't even see that they've made the payment. Like, there's no way to go in and did that work? They can't even go in and see that happened. With this community portal and this link, they're going to be able to see everything they need to see in the city. And that doesn't mean they can't pay with a check or that they have to use the portal, but there will be many people that will use it. And we know that because we get calls all the time. And we get feedback all the time saying, you guys are like in the Stone Age. Why can't I do this? Why can't I set up a recurring payment? So for me, it's just exciting to be able to say, yeah, it would be exciting to say, this is coming.
Yeah.
And then in turn, the efficiencies we gain from a staffing standpoint, I think
Right.
would be remarkable. So, yeah, I'm very excited.
Obviously.
That is good. That's well said and well summarized. Again, I want to reinforce, we have been happy with our system. Yes, it might be cumbersome at times, but it's very tailored to the city of Fergus Falls. Anything we ever asked for, could this program be tailored for what we need it? A good example is Sandy has to do a state reporting form each year in the state format. Well, Tony years ago wrote a program that summarized our data in the state forms format. So you can run that and apply it to that program. Things like that are not going to be in this, but things like in the special assessment program are set up for Minnesota Statute 429. They already have form letters in there. So Civic Systems is a subsidiary of Baker Tilly. We did not know that when we first, inquired of them. We work with Baker Tilly. They're our bond consultants as well. Baker Tilly has a background in being a CPA firm, is how they originally started. So they come from a long line of audit firms and seeing what do cities need to do and how do they need to operate. So I'm confident that way that will work well. Again, I want to reiterate, we do need to change. We do need to move to something different because we do not have the ongoing support of our current system any longer. You're not finding this language of our system taught in schools any longer. There's other languages taught. Am I summarizing that accurately? Just finding that in the future. Again, I would be fine, using our system till I retire, but we need to get ready for that next generation. I will be here for quite a while yet, but we do need to get ready for that next generation as well. But I am excited about, like Sandy said, all the things it can do internally and externally. So the next question, how do we pay for this new system? Because this is a very reasonable system, I do see too. In your packet, I put that cost of $223,000. As of today, I want to up that to $235,000. They've offered to allow us to pay that over 3 years with no interest. So I like that option. Why not take that option? Work that through the budget that way. So that would be $78,333 per year. That's for the purchase and the install. There will be some travel costs on top of that, estimated at $10,241. Yeah, Brian, you like that ending in one because we were always joking how I never round anything up too much. So they didn't either. You can see that. But that's a not to exceed number. So if we do some of our training virtually with them, of course we won't have that. We would have the option to go to their offices in Wisconsin. If we wanted to send a small group, most of it will be done on site here, working here. That's how that's really going to work. But we have those other options. The hosting fees in the packet is $44,125 per year. That will go up to $45,775. So I added $1,650 for those other two modules that I want to add right from as we go out of the gate. We will spread this between the general fund and the enterprise funds because the enterprise funds, think of the utility billing alone, certainly needs to, those utility funds need to pay for those utility modules. So with that annual cost, the hosting, because this is a web-based software application, we will always get the, current updates every year. With no additional fees for that. So we're paying for this initial install and training, and then those hosting fees and those annual fees cover all those updates and whatnot. So we're looking at $235,000 up front, just about $46,000 a year after that. Now, under our current system where we own our mainframe computer, it's housed right in this building, we do have annual costs that we need to pay now. And that is about $44,200 that we're currently paying annually. that we will no longer need to pay. So that's pretty much a wash from the hosting fee to what we're currently pay for various things. There may be a few other things that we won't have to pay for any longer as well as we dig more into that. We also budget about $36,000 a year, to save for that next AS400 replacement. That's what we've always done, put the money away. So 4 years later, 5 years later, when you need to buy that system, you've got the money in the bank. Well, we won't have to be doing that anymore because we're not going to be replacing that system. Now, we'll have some servers locally that you're also planning for, and we do that as well. And then we used to have 2 people in our IT department. Now we have 1. Dan Knutsen's our IT manager. Our systems analyst left the employee of the city this year. And when we knew we had to go a new direction here, we didn't fill that position because we thought we better wait and see where we're going. This will all, this civic system would be supported by that company. So we're not proposing that we replace that position. So certainly the savings from not filling that position then can go towards this purchase as well. So that's our plan. That's, I think over the long term, we can see some cost savings with this as well. As you can see from staffing, not needing as much staffing here, working and writing on programs. So it'll be more, the day-to-day maintenance of us users that can be kind of a pain sometimes. But
I make the recommendation, then I got some questions for Bill.
So we got a motion to bring this to the council to recommend that we purchase and install the system. Someone like to second that? Scott, thank you. Go ahead, Anthony.
Thanks, Bill. I appreciate your enthusiasm on this Wednesday morning. And I do agree that we need to get into the 21st century on it. What would be, I've got 5 questions, or 6 questions.
I hope I have 6 answers then.
Implementation timing.
Oh, yep. I put that in here and I failed to mention that. We're looking 12 to 18 months out from the time we sign the contract with them. So if you approve this on Monday night, we can get a contract signed. Then we're at least a year or more out, year to a year and a half out.
Okay. The next question was the historical data. Would that be available through the portal, or would that be just archived in City Hall?
Another good question, and I was going to bring that up, so I'm glad you asked that. Currently, again, for us inside City Hall, we have access to data to January 1st, 1992. So way back. We're not going to import all that data. Probably 3 years to 5 years at the most is what. So we will be importing historical data. I'm guessing 3 years. Looking to my cohorts here, but 3 to 5 years.
Was the backup of the system and security of the system?
That is all done by
Civic.
By Civic. Yep.
And
Dan,
then-
do you have more knowledge on that?
They just take care of all the updates, they take care of the backups, the security, all of those aspects are covered by that cloud-based service, which is software as a service.
Right.
And that's how they sell it, that's how they promote it. So we don't have to deal with any of that on back end like we do now.
Right. And then would there be any hardware updates at the city? Obviously, I know you get a new software program and then your computer that's on Windows 10 won't run it. So you then have to kind of get a new computer.
Not currently, we're pretty up to date on all our machines. We're at least Windows 10 or
Right.
better. And so there shouldn't be anything that we would need to buy here to run that software.
Right.
And there's a mobile device application with it as well. So it runs on all our mobile devices. You don't even need a computer, especially for the residents.
Right. So a city resident would be able to put an app on their phone and log into their account.
Correct.
And then whereabouts in Wisconsin was my last question.
What's that?
Whereabouts in Wisconsin was my...
What town is it again?
I don't know for sure either.
Sheboygan.
I think it's Madison. I think.
Right. Okay.
Yep, right on the cover. Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you. That was it. Here
Thanks,
endeth my
Anthony.
questions.
Other questions? Al?
I just got a question, Bill. Is this the same? Maybe it was about a little over a year ago when we were talking about the same thing. What company was that was recommended then?
So that was one module, and that was a different company. That was AE2S, that's Advanced Engineering, and that was just a capital improvement planning
Okay.
module that they do for cities and just capital improvements. So we're not looking at that at this point. We'll see how this goes for capital planning because it has a whole, the whole fixed asset series, and we should be able to be covered on this. And like I said, even with our existing system that's been very tailored, you know, this system isn't going to be perfectly tailored to us. But again, we know we need to change, but it's going to do so many things so well. You know, just as an example, City of Sartell, St. Joseph, and Waite Park are all on this system. So our fellow finance people there, you know, we've talked to, but yep, different
I
company.
was just curious.
Yep.
All right, we have a motion to bring this to the council on Monday night for consideration. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Sandy. Thanks, Dan. Next up, we'll call on our Public Works Director, Guy Taylor, about a purchase equipment for the landfill. Good morning, Guy.
Morning, thank you, Your Honor. In the landfill operations, we have a bulldozer that's used for crushing, pushing, covering, all kinds of stuff in that operation. The current bulldozer is 20-plus years old and has had some significant maintenance things need to be done in the last few years. One of the problematic things with that dozer, even though it's John Deere, we like to support John Deere, it is a model that's built in France. So sometimes we've waited for months for some parts. So that's been problematic. But anyway, the one correction from the memo is the number of hours. I asked how many hours were on the unit and put that on the memo, but in the cab of the dozer, it says hour meter was changed at 3,000 hours. So that's what, or at 5798 hours. So now it has 5798 plus 3,000, so close to 9,000 hours on this current machine. So it's getting tired, and the current model that we've had Ziegler quote for us is a CAT model 963 track loader. It's got what they call a waste package. It's built for landfills. It's got guards and covers and stuff that prevent some of the vital parts from getting hit and punctured from the debris that it's traveling over. So the purchase price is $438,382 and 16 cents, not rounding with that, and the trade-in of $34,000 and a state contract credit of $137,276.88. So the $438,382.16 would come from the equipment fund, and we've been planning for that, and it's budgeted for.
Thanks, Guy. And we can recommend council consider this money out.
I'll make a recommendation.
Thanks, Anthony.
I'll do it.
Thanks, Scott.
That's all.
Questions for Guy?
What's
Anthony?
the delivery time on it?
Probably about 6 months.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion to bring this to the council. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Approved. Opposed, same sign. That's approved. Thank you. Next, we'll call on Brian Uvar, our city engineer, to talk about the final design for Junius Avenue from Union to Cascade.
Yes, thank you, Your
Morning,
Honor.
Brian.
Good morning. Yeah, back in June 17th of this year, we had a preliminary project hearing for this project. Since then, the council passed a resolution to proceed with the project plans and specification. So since then, I've been working with Interstate Engineering, and I secured a professional services proposal for in the amount of $112,610 for the final design of this project. I want to note this amount is consistent with the total estimated project cost that was presented back on June 17th. So if acceptable, we'll start the plans and specifications, and I'll be presenting those to you soon so we can start authorization to advertise for bids. Just want to note, I'm proposing that we'll accept bids recalculate the final cost assessments, conduct a final cost hearing, and then put contingent, award the project contingent on that. This is what we've been doing for the past years. That has been, I guess, very beneficial to the city. So at this time, I'm requesting resolution accepting Interstate Engineering's professional service proposal for final design in the amount of $112,610.
Thanks, Brian. Just real quick, what would the construction estimate be at what time date? Is it this construction season yet?
Well, we're going to see what market pricing does. We
Sure.
could bid with an alternate having.
That's the goal, though.
A goal, yes. Contractors are starting to get full at this time. We've had a lot of amount of rain this spring, and subsequently that has pushed back a lot of contractors as well too. So we're going to try to add flexibility. One thing, working days, trying to get it done this year. I do not like building roads in late fall. However, like past projects, if we do a working day contract like we're doing on some of our other projects that we took bids last year, do a working day with a substantial completion of fall, it gives that a lot of flexibility and resources for the contractor that pricing has been very conducive for that. So we'll figure out some way.
Sounds good. Thanks, Brian.
I'll make it. I got a question too.
Thanks, Scott. Someone like to second?
I'll second
Thanks,
that.
Laura. Go ahead, Scott.
And what was our number back in June?
1.9 million.
1.9.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions? I know that this is obviously a road that's in dire need of
Yes, it is.
the work, so that's kind of my question on the timing of it.
Getting dug up today, too.
It's getting dug up.
Got a leak.
There's a motion to bring this to the council on Monday. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
All right, I don't believe there's anything else to come before the committee this morning, so we are adjourned. Have a nice day, everyone.